I'd like to welcome everybody to the Science of Happiness. We've got Michelle Lane from the North Kansas City Hospital here with us this evening. My name is Beth. I'm the Adult Programming Librarian for the Mid-Continent Public Library System. So welcome everybody. Just a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. I did put the link to the survey for tonight's program in the chat. So if you can take a moment at the end of the program to let us know how we did, we always appreciate that. We are going to ask folks to stay muted so that we don't have background noise. If you've got questions, you can feel free to type them in the chat. We'll save time at the end and go through them. Tonight's program is being recorded. So once we get that recording processed and up on our YouTube channel, I will send everybody the link to that as well. I also would like to mention a couple of upcoming programs that we have. And the first one is called Tribute to Truman. And we have an actor, Ken Remmert, that does a one-man show about Truman's life. He will be coming to 6 different branches throughout the metro in October and early November to present that program. That one is in person, but you can visit our website for more details and to register. October 3rd at 7 p.m. on Zoom for Hispanic Heritage Month, we have a program called Beyond Brown, Mexican Struggles for Equality Before and After Brown v. Board. We have a look at segregation experienced by Mexican and Mexican American students in schools with a particular focus on the Kansas City metro area. That one, you do need to register in order to receive the Zoom link. If you want to travel without leaving home, on October 11th at 7 on Zoom, we have Gene Flynn back with another travel program. This one is about 7 days in Vienna. So he'll be looking at the royal past as it's seen in that city. And then on October 17th at 6:30 on Zoom, Mark Lyons is going to be back talking about how you can grow sprouts and microgreens and use them in healthy recipes. And then the last program I'm going to mention is Michelle will be back again on October 26th at 6:30 here on Zoom. And she's going to talk about the science of intermittent fasting. So a way that you can lose weight with time-restricted eating. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and I'm going to turn it over to Michelle and let her get her screen up and get started.
All right. Can you guys see my slides?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So as she said, my name is Michelle Lane. I am a nurse and I work at North Kansas City Hospital, but my career path has been just as versatile as my hair color. I started my career back working in psychology. And back then we looked at what was broken and what was going on in the mind, like psychosis or neurosis, phobias, depression. And we were looking for cures or treatments after there were problems, after there was a fact. But what I am absolutely intrigued about is the opposite question, which is when are we happy and what does it look like to live and thrive psychologically? This body of science is called positive psychology. And what I love about positive psychology is it's ridiculously evidence-based. As a nurse practitioner, I believe soundly that we need to be looking at science to make decisions on how we should act. And this is not feel-good, fluffy guesswork. This is real hard research involving hundreds and thousands of people that I'm going to share with you today. I'm an avid learner. I was told one time that you're only as interesting as the people you meet and the books you read. And I took that literally. I'm a bookworm that just absolutely loves to share. So what I'm going to talk about today is the hard evidence that talks about what is happiness, why is it good for us, and what can we do to create more happiness in our lives? I did a ridiculously extensive literature review. I evaluated over 400 studies, and I read countless books, listened to podcasts, blogs, the whole thing. My bedside table looked like a recycle bin. I'm being honest here. And what I did was I threw out any body of evidence that had any hint of bias whatsoever. If it wasn't statistically significant, if there was a funding for the research that was a drug manufacturer, I threw it out. So what I'm going to talk about today is the hard science of why happiness is important to us and how we can increase our set point of happiness, and we can give ourselves little boosts of happiness. So that's what we're going to cover in this evening's talk. I don't need to spend too much time on this next slide. This world is a mess. Do I need to say another thing whatsoever? We have a higher divorce rate, we have division, we have suicide, we have violent crimes, we have an opioid epidemic, politics. There's nothing else I can talk about. Everything is a mess. But what can we do? We can control ourselves. And that is what we're going to talk about tonight, is controlling ourselves. So what is happiness anyway? We all have a different definition, but I just want to make sure we're all kind of speaking from the same space. And so according to the science, happiness is how satisfied are you with your life and how good do you feel on a day-to-day basis? I find it really fascinating if you talk to anybody and you say, what do you want? Or you say, oh, I wish them happiness, right? Everybody says this, oh, I want to be happy. I just want my grandkids to be happy. We plan our day every day in our head. We run through our day as we're taking our shower. This morning I thought, okay, I need to set out chicken for dinner. I need to run by and drop something off at the post office. You go through everything you want to get done. You live this life right here inside your brain. But we think that pizza is just going to be, or we think happiness is just going to be delivered like a pizza to our doorstep. And we don't think about the intentionality that happiness takes. It doesn't just show up like a pizza. We have to use it and work it like a muscle. We have to intentionally do certain things in our life to create that happiness muscle for ourselves. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. What I do want to cover first is we need to discuss what happiness is not. The data does not show that happiness is having lots of money. So money is kind of like health. It doesn't guarantee that you're going to be happy, but not having to worry about it does make your life a lot easier. According to a study by Princeton, around $75,000 a year will get you everything you need or more. Anything more than that will only increase your happiness just marginally. We also know that buying excessive amounts of stuff will not boost your long-term set point of happiness, because you're always going to return to that baseline of happiness. We all have a baseline of happiness, so we're going to talk about that. And we can give ourselves boosts, but we want to do some deliberate things to increase our set point of happiness. Research shows that we need to be buying experiences over things. Buy a concert, a guitar lesson, a sporting event, a rock climbing lesson, one of those mystery dinner theaters. We need to do things that create memories, and we hold on to those feel-good neurotransmitters, those memories, longer than we do a thing. So the science shows that happiness is not about money, and it's also not about sex. Despite what some people may tell you, 2.2 times is the number of weekly romps it takes to send your happiness levels to its peak, according to a really interesting University of Colorado Boulder study. People were 55% more likely to report higher levels of happiness when they got busy 2.2 times a week, rather than having sex more than that or sex less than that. So I just want to let you know that, so you can keep that in mind and use that information to however you deem it to be helpful in your life. It's not about money, and it's not about sex. So what is happiness about? Well, we all have this set point of happiness that we're discussing. And the largest body of evidence comes from a University of Minnesota, a study done with a bunch of twins. a big study, really, really well done, large and done over an extended period of time. And what they found is that your set point of happiness comes from three things. 10% of your happiness is determined by your circumstances. This actually plays a smaller role than what we thought it did. Evidence shows that people who face adversity in their life are happier. And I was so grateful to learn this. Research shows that people that have some adversity, they go through, they have some distance, they gain perspective, and they make sense of this challenge that they had in their life. And it actually helps them shape their identity, cope better with current stressors and stressors in the future. They're more optimistic people, and they also test as being more resilient. So that's great news for people like me who have an extremely high ACE score. And if you don't know what an ACE score is, I spell that, it's ACE, ACE score. If you've never watched TED Talks, there's a website called www.tedtalk.com. And it's a bunch of like 10 to 15 minute little short videos on anything you'd want to learn about, scientists, political statements. It's just absolutely fascinating. But there is, my favorite is how childhood trauma affects your health across a lifetime. It's done by Nadine Burke Harris, and it is absolutely riveting. And it's all about ACE scores, adversity, and your health long term. So the second thing that determines our biological set point of happiness is that biological chromosomes that we get from our parents, okay? So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this because guess what? We don't control it. We get what we get with our parents' chromosomes that they give us. So what we are going to focus on is the 40% of your happiness that is absolutely controlled by you. It is your actions, your behaviors, your framework in which you look at the world. There was a great University of Maryland study done, and it showed that the average person has about 12,000 to 60,000 thoughts per day. Remember at the beginning of the talk, I talked about how you're in the shower and you're having this whole conversation with yourself about vowing to work out or get the chicken out or whatever. Most of our life is spent right inside this brain. And what this study showed is that 80% of our thoughts that we have all day long are negative. We have the most negative self-talk. And of those messages we're giving ourselves, 90% are repetitive. We're saying the same negative things to ourselves over and over and over. And what this reveals to us is how our bodies respond to the way that we think and we feel and we act. And this is called that mind-body connection. And the biggest takeaway I can tell you today is the quality of your existence rests on your internal and your external communication abilities. What you say to yourself, what do you say to others, what do you don't say, what are you scared about saying? It is all about communication. I want to tell just a story. I think I have just a little bit of time, but I don't buy presents for my adult children anymore. We go on a vacation together. I want to give them an experience. I've been doing this since they were like 13 and 14. My kids are a year apart. And every year we go on a trip. And about 6 years ago, we were getting ready to fly to Utah. And we're at the airport in Kansas City, and the, overhead announcement came on, and they said, "Oh, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen," and they explained that the pilot had gotten in delayed from another flight, and there was a required rest period of 45 minutes before that pilot could leave again, a safety precautions. Well, you kind of heard and felt like the energy of that group of people shift just a little bit. But it was okay. Everybody, we were like, all right, it's, it's fine. We load on the plane about an hour later. And again, we are all sitting down. People are shuffling, moving about, getting their bags up. And again, the pilot comes on and he says, "Oh, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, we've been going through our checklist and, we've discovered something that needs to be resolved before takeoff." Well, then you felt the energy of that plane really shift. The guy to my left reaches for his cell phone, doesn't even say hello to the person that's on the other end, immediately dives into, "Oh yeah, Sleeping Beauty had to get her rest. And now we couldn't do a checklist before time. So now we got to sit here and wait for them to complete this." Just going at whoever's on the other line. And you hear that person say, "Well, do you know when you're going to arrive?" "No, I don't know when I'm going to get there. I don't know. I may not even be able to speak to the client. No, we may not even get our bonus. We may not even get to go on vacation." And he just basically hangs up on this person. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And the person to my right reaches for their phone. And I'm like, oh, Lord, there's two of them. And he gets his phone out and he starts, talking to the person. He's like, hey, honey, it's me. They recognized there was something that needed to be resolved on the plane before we took off. I'm so grateful they found it before we left. Just wanted to let you know, I don't know when I'm going to arrive, but I want to tell you I love you and I'm looking forward to seeing you. And we'll talk to you as soon as I land. Same experience, same situation for everybody that was involved. Two different ways to view this experience. Am I a victim to this experience, right? And oh my gosh, right? This has happened to me. You can tell a lot about somebody by how they handle tangled up Christmas lights. Is it, we can work through this and figure this out, or oh my gosh, is this guy falling? And this is that energy that I'm talking about how we can control some of our own happiness by how we react and our thoughts and our behaviors that we have. So we've talked about what happiness is. We talked about what happiness is not. And we talked about what your set point of happiness is. I want to talk just a little bit about why happiness is good for you. There is evidence. It's not that it just feels good. I mean, it does. It feels good to smile and laugh with your friends. But there are medical reasons why happiness is so good for us. So let's talk a little bit about that research. And remember, in order for me to talk about something, it had to show up in at least 30 studies in order for me to, bring it forward as this is evidence and this is real. I may find something, you may bring something up in the questions afterwards. And that may be true, but if I didn't find legitimate, extensive research done on it, validating something, then I'm not going to talk about it. But I will tell you that whether you view the glass as half full or half empty may absolutely determine your risk for heart disease. This shows up in over 30 studies. Just as negative emotions like depression or anger or hostility, those are risk factors for heart attacks and strokes, happiness can actually protect the heart. Researchers followed about 1,700 people in this study in Canada for about 10 years to determine whether attitudes affected their health. And after accounting for known heart disease risk factors, the researchers found that the happiest people were 22% less likely to develop heart disease over a 10-year expansion of time than the people with more negative attitudes. Study after study, I found it's demonstrated that people with the most negative emotions have the highest risk factors for heart disease, and people who score the highest for happiness have the lowest. John Hopkins did a wonderful, beautiful study I would love to replicate, and they found that people with a family history of heart disease that have a positive outlook over a 25-year period of time were 1/3 less likely to have a heart attack over that 25-year period. This really fits into a larger body of evidence that pessimism is a risk factor for poor health. When pessimistic people develop age-related illnesses like cancer or heart disease, that illness tends to progress faster. Like cynically hostile people, and people with shorter telomeres in general, people that are hostile and cynical tend to die earlier. This is in the science. And if you don't know about telomeres, I have to just take a 1 minute, a public, little short excerpt about this. So telomeres are so interesting. Telomeres are like those little plastic caps on the end of your chromosomes that as your cell divides, it kind of protects it. Like the end of your shoelace has that little plastic cap on the end of your shoelace. Well, your chromosomes have these little plastic little things so they don't split off. And it protects your chromosomes as they divide over time. And there is a huge body of research coming out talking about the role that these telomeres play in how we age. There's another great TED Talk, and it's called The Science of Cells That Never Get Old. And it's about telomeres. It's like 12 minutes long, and it is so good. And that TED Talks, it's a free website. You don't have to pay or be a member or anything like that. It's absolutely an amazing wealth of information. So, happy people are also less likely to get sick because the brain is directly wired to our immune system. So we have got portions of our nervous system that connect with our thymus and our bone marrow. And there was a study that was done. This was done right before COVID. And it was really well done. There was 950 adult volunteers, and they were exposed to the cold virus. They did get compensated, so don't worry. But the participants were surveyed and monitored for their emotions, for feeling energetic or pleased or happy about their life 2 weeks prior to coming into the laboratory. And then when they came into the laboratory, they were literally swabbed with the flu virus. It was put on their cups and their food, and they took a cotton swab and just swabbed their whole nasal passage with this cold virus. And you know what? 40% more likely to develop the flu if your survey 2 weeks prior to coming in was negative, you felt bad about the world, if you answered things about not feeling energetic, you were more likely to get sick. Another great study done by Ronald Glazier, and this was done at the Behavioral Medicine Research at Ohio State University. He did a great study with blood sampling from medical students, and he found that during stressful periods, like exam periods, finals, or clinicals, they had this lower activity of their virus-fighting immune system, literal blood draws, and those viruses that should be your fighter T cells that should be protecting you were sleeping. And then they repeated it during times of not stress, graduation, elation, Christmas break, all of those things. And you know what? Boom, back up. Their immune system was back fighting again the way it should be. And I think we've all probably had that life experience where maybe, a child got married or something happened and you're just like going, and you get like no sleep and you're just getting all this stuff done and you get sick. You get sick right afterwards because you've had high stress, no sleep, all the things, and your immune system just kind of shuts down on you. Excuse me. Additionally, I have to cover this. Over 30 studies found that happiness will add several years to your life. Even more significant to me is this is the same amount that science says will be added to your life if you quit smoking. Okay, so we have billboards that say, quit smoking, smoking is bad for you. We know that it will kill you. You will die early from smoking. Why don't we have billboards that say happiness is important? And talk about mental health more openly. If it's going to add 7.5 years to your life, this should be something that we're all talking about. We talk about smoking openly, and I just think that that's something that I'm so grateful that you're here and you guys can talk about this and have a ripple effect with this information, because happiness is so valuable for a long life. So we've talked about what happiness is. We've talked about what happiness is not. We've talked about why it's good to be happy. Now let's talk about the chemicals that can give us the feels, okay? So we've got this quartet of neurotransmitters, and we actually have like 300 neurotransmitters in our body, but some of them are dedicated solely to our happiness. And I want to talk about what happens. We can do purposeful things to give ourselves a little squirt of these neurotransmitters that feel great. Now, we're going to return back to our normal set point of happiness. We're going to talk about 4 other things we can do to build up that set point of happiness. But these are things that we can do purposefully every day to trigger our neurotransmitters to not just be in the passenger seat of our happiness, but to intentionally cause them to flow and be the driver of our happiness. So let's start with the first one. The magical quartet it spells out DOSE because I'm a nurse and I think there needs to be an acronym for everything, although there won't be a quiz or anything like that. But the 4 major chemicals responsible for your happiness are dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. And so these 4 neurochemicals are important for a couple of reasons. First, I want to take a little public service announcement and share something I didn't know until I really got deep into this research. But when you're in utero and your body is forming in your mommy's tummy, as the part of the tissue that will become your brain branches off and comes back, there is a part of that brain tissue that is left inside this abdominal cavity. That becomes your intestines. That becomes your stomach. So this is why it is so important for gut health, because guess what's made in those stomach? That stomach makes your dopamine, your oxytocin, your serotonin. Your gut makes your feel-good chemicals. It sends messages to your brain to feel them, but you're making them in your stomach. And so your gut health, what you eat, is so, so, so important. But let's talk about dopamine. Dopamine is that neurotransmitter. It's like a feel-good, mood-boosting chemical, and it's responsible for relaxation and euphoria. And in the science, it shows that this really has a lot to do with anticipation. This is the brain chemical that motivates us for action. So one of the quickest things that you can do is you can make a list and check things off of that list. That is an easy way to give yourself a beautiful dose of dopamine. Accomplishing something, you anticipate the work you've got to do and accomplish it, easy way. One of the things that showed up in the research that I thought was fascinating is that people with a lot of self-doubt and laziness had a lot of low dopamine. So that neurotransmitter of anticipating having to do something, those two kind of go hand in hand. Setting a goal and achieving them. One of the other things that showed up in the science that's newer to me is that addictive drugs like cocaine or methamphetamine, they act on that dopamine system. Opioids do too. So it blocks the reuptake of that dopamine, so it stays in the synaptic gap of the brain longer, and you get that high feeling. And the newest research that's coming out shows that dopamine is what is released in our body when somebody likes something on our social media. And I'm just as bad as anybody else. I'll post a picture of my grandbaby or my amazing golden retriever, and I see somebody like it, and it feels good that somebody likes something that I posted, right? But the easiest way to get dopamine flowing is to make a list and check things off. The second neurotransmitter that I want to talk about is oxytocin. So oxytocin is within intimacy or trust. This is built in healthy relationships. It's released by men and women during intimacy and by mothers during childbirth or when they're breastfeeding. The easiest way to get a dose of oxytocin flowing in your day-to-day is to give somebody a hug. During COVID, and we had some space restrictions, one other way that showed up in the science for social bonding like that is to make eye contact and have an attentive, present conversation. We know that conversation where you really feel like you connected with somebody. That energy, maybe where you're kind of attracted to somebody, that kind of, that electric feeling, that energy vibe. That's oxytocin that shows up in your bloodstream. So it's a super easy one. We can't necessarily walk around and hug people all day long, but it's an easy way for you to get a nice dose of your oxytocin. And then third, another transmitter I want to talk about that you can give yourself just quick little doses of it is serotonin. Serotonin flows when you feel significant or important. So this is why people may fall into gang activity or criminal activity. That culture of feeling important is really powerful. A quick way to give somebody a dose of serotonin or give it to somebody else is gratitude, either a handwritten card or sincerely thanking somebody. The other day I was at Aldi's, and the gal that did my scanning, she sorted it and put like the fruit and veggies together and like the freezer stuff together in the cart. And I just took a moment and I said, wow, thank you so much for sorting that. That is going to make it so easy on me. And you could just tell. She was like, oh, wow, somebody noticed this extra effort that I did. Or, you see that little boy that holds open the door at a restaurant for the next family. I take the power of a pause there. And I look at that child and I say, oh my gosh, your parents must be so proud of you. That is so kind. You opening that door and you just see that kid swell up like a tick. Words are powerful. We need to use them like pixie dust. We should be sprinkling these magic words everywhere. They're free, for heaven's sakes. So another quick way to get a dose of serotonin is, through your vitamin D. UV rays, sunshine is a wonderful serotonin pick-me-up, especially lately. My gosh, could we have any prettier of days? In the wintertime, though, I do use something called a Happy Light. I bought it off Amazon. I don't get anything for this. It was like $14. It's literally called a Happy Light. And I keep it at my desk. And in the wintertime, when it's dark or when it's a rainy day and the sun never shines, I flip that thing on, $13. It ain't, nothing wasted. If it's not working, the placebo makes me feel better. So the last endorphin that I want to talk about is probably the one that's the most interesting to me. Oh, I said the last endorphin. I mean the last neurotransmitter is endorphins. So this one is super, super interesting. Endorphins are released in response to pain and stress, and they kind of help alleviate anxiety and depression. The actual word endorphin means self-producing morphine. I think it's really cool. Endorphins look almost like opiates in their structure. They're like two little structures off of an opioid. So endorphins make you feel good. They're made by the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus. And one of the main ways that you can get endorphins is exercise. Strenuous exercise, it will diminish your pain receptors. There is a lot of value in saying that the motion is the lotion for a lot of problems. Along with exercise, regular laughter is one of the easiest ways to get a great dose of endorphins. One of the interesting bodies of science that I thought was just kind of unique is that endorphins are why people like spicy foods. That's what shows up after you eat a spicy food and your face is all hot. That's what people enjoy. Acupuncture is you get endorphins from that. Cold showers, that is a really big thing now. There's like a Wim Hof thing where you take a cold shower. At the end of your shower, you do a cold ice bath. Not going to be something I do, I'll be honest with you. But what happens is your body releases a bunch of endorphins, that self-producing morphine that makes you feel good. And so those are just a couple quick ways that you can give yourself neurotransmitters on a day-to-day basis. But remember, after that hug, after that smile, after giving gratitude, any of that things, you're going to return back to your baseline set of happiness. But we are going to talk next about how do we increase our base set point of happiness. So first, I want to talk about this really impressive study. There's another TED Talk on this too. It is the Harvard study of adult development. This is a study that has been tracking the lives of over 1,000 men and then now their families for over 90 years. It's one of the longest studies of human life ever done at Harvard. It began in the Great Depression. And actually, JFK was one of the original subjects while he was at Harvard. I thought that was super interesting. But the investigators took two groups of men. Half of them were Harvard students, and half of them were the poorest of the poor. They didn't even have running water. And they surveyed these two groups of men every 2 years about their physical health, their mental health, their professional lives, their relationships, their friendships. They did blood tests, medical exams, brain scans, personality, IQ tests, drinking habits. They measured everything. I reached out to the author of this study and wanted to know about his data. They even measured the hanging length of the scrotum. I mean, I kid you not, every single data point you could ever collect. And now this study is including the participants' wives and children and grandchildren. And the fascinating piece of this study is that the results absolutely floored me. It wasn't their middle-aged cholesterol that predicted how healthy they were going to be when they got old. It was how satisfied they were with their relationships. The people who were in the most satisfied relationships at age 50 were the most healthiest at 80. That was the compounding biggest thing that they found. This Harvard study showed us two big lessons about relationships. Social connection is so good for us. Good relationships keep us happier and healthier. People more connected to human community, friends, family, live longer. It's a fact. The other piece that shows up in this is that loneliness will kill. People more isolated than they want to be, they are less happy, their health, their brain functioning declines quicker, and they die younger than those who do not report loneliness. Now, there are those type of people, like my ex-husband, who doesn't want to be around anybody. Now, those people are included in this because he's not lonely. He doesn't want to be around people. That's a choice. So loneliness is not good, but this study is so important. One of the main things we can do to increase our set point of happiness is nurture relationships. The science does show this doesn't have to be a spouse. This could be a sister. This could be a best friend. This could be a neighbor that is your bestie. So find those relationships. Cultivate them, work at them. I am so purposeful and intentional about my relationships with people at work. I will make notes in my phone about things to follow up and ask them about because it's not cheating. And it's that I want to know. I want to be able to follow up and say, hey, did your husband Brian get that job? Or how did the birthday party go last Sunday? This stuff matters to me, but I have so much coming at me sometimes. that I don't remember everything. So why not use a tool of recording it and keeping track of it and using that? So I'll tell you what, nurturing relationships are the easiest and best way to get started to increase your set point of happiness. The second thing that shows up large and in charge in the research, remember, it had to be in over 30 studies to make it into this is fact, and I think this is really evidence-based. The second thing you can do to increase your set point of happiness is to intentionally seek out new experiences or find your flow. So what this is we want to be able to lose track of time. Whatever you do in your life that makes you just, you lose track of everything, whether that's read a book or fish, or you're a gamer, or I love to run in the woods, I'm a trail runner. Whatever you want to do, yoga. Some people like to get a glass of wine and cook in the kitchen. That's not me. I wish it was. But whatever you do, that when you're doing it, you lose all track of time. Science says that is so good for you. And you need to weave that into your day. You need to be intentional. When you think, I'm going to work out today, I'm going to get chicken out, and I'm going to drop that package off before I go to work, you also need to think, what am I going to do today to find my flow? What am I going to do to be able to boost my set point of happiness? And so new experiences also fall in this category too. And why science says so is because you get so enraptured in that new experience, whether it's the mystery dinner or throwing axes or a scavenger hunt or whatever it is, that you're just involved in that experience. And so again, you just lose track of time and you don't think about other things. One thing that really showed up in the science is yoga and meditation. You know, I'm not a yoga pant wearer myself, but I do spend between 5 to 7 minutes in the morning. I use an app called the Calm app. There's a free version of it, and they have morning meditations, and it drives me through either some breathing techniques that just are real short. And I do find myself calmer and more centered and more focused than ever before. Just taking a couple minutes to sip my coffee and just taking that time for myself. At first, I was distracted and I couldn't do it for more than 1 second. But really now I look forward to that kind of grounding exercise of where I don't think about anything but my breath. So I invite all of you to try that. You don't have to buy yoga pants, but you can just sit in a chair and try it yourself. So the third thing that shows up in science to increase your set point of happiness is that we actually derive more happiness from doing nice things for other people. I love this. I love this so much. It is simply part of our nature to be altruistic, kind, compassionate. There were some really excellent studies done that showed the helping behaviors in toddlers. You know, you'd see this toddler on video. There were video studies, and the toddler would watch an adult drop something in the study and they would rush to help, you know, pick it up without any prompting. You know, we want to be helpful. It's tempting to think, you know, that happiness is this like lofty, crazy goal that requires like this huge change, but it doesn't. According to research, it's just these simple, small, little changes that significantly impact your happiness. So another happiness booster that falls into this helping other is to be nice to other people, right? So one thing my kids and I do, I work at a hospital, right? We go and we get quarters and we put them in bags and we put them in the waiting room at the cancer unit waiting room or the open heart surgery. And we put a little note in there with those quarters and we just say, have a Coke and a smile on us. And we tape it to that vending machine, right? And then we sit there in the waiting room because what the science shows is you're not going to get happier by buying the coffee for the person in front of you in the car or behind you, or just donating $100 to such and such. You need to see the person that you're helping, that you're appreciating. That was very integral in the science. So we sit in the waiting room and we've got these vending machines with some quarters in there, and you think the money would just disappear, right? You think, oh yeah, that's like people are going to take that money and go, but you don't. What happens is incredible and it's heartwarming, and you see people walk up to that vending machine and they're like, oh, that's cute. And they turn to the people they're with in the cancer waiting room or the open heart waiting room and they say, oh, look at this. And they put their money in the bag or they add to it, or they start talking about, one of their experiences where there was a random act of kindness somewhere else. And it changes the whole dynamic in the waiting room, and for my kids and I, this is such a gift for us. I mean, it's a gift now for me to be able to talk about it and share this with you guys, because, helping others it feels good. It feels good to talk about it and say, yeah, I'm one of those people that does something like that. I take the time to go out of the way to do things like that to help other people. So another thing that was showed up in the science that I thought was really fun is within a family or a friend group setting, around Thanksgiving or something like that, they would give their kids $5 and, have them give that away. And so what that does is it shifts your mindset for watching things that are wrong and watching things that could, that are not going well, to shifting it to looking for somebody that you want to compliment, right? And so, if you're looking for the server that's doing an amazing job taking care of you, or the bartender that jumps right on your drink, or whomever, right, is doing a wonderful job, it changes your experience in life. If the filter you're looking for is, I'm looking for awesome because I want to tell them they're awesome, it changes who you are. Absolutely. So writing messages on a sidewalk, complimenting somebody sincerely, like me with the Aldi's gal the other day when she sorted my groceries. These are all things that can increase your set point of happiness by helping other people. And then lastly, I think they turned the light off on me in here. Did it get dark? I think it did. The last behavior that can increase your set point of happiness is gratitude. Gratitude is so powerful. It enlarges your prefrontal cortex over time. If you write a letter of gratitude to somebody that maybe helped you in the past, this can boost your mood for a month. The value of gratefulness is profound in the research. It's not forced positivity. It's not positive thinking. It's more of this like very strong human emotion of like, holy cow, I appreciate you. During COVID, I wrote a letter to somebody who was so helpful to me. And it was so powerful for me to write this letter to this person, just telling them how grateful I was for them. And this is rooted in research. There's two leading researchers in this topic. One is actually a Kansas City gal. Her name is Gretchen Rubin. She graduated from Pembroke Hill, and she wrote a book called The Happiness Project. And she found in her research, longitudinal research for over 10 years, that if you write down one time a week for 6 weeks, something that you're grateful for, it will increase your happiness for about 5 to 6 days. So you get better sleep, according to her science, and you're more likely to exercise. That's what Gretchen Rubin found. Absolutely great book. In 12 years of research, Brene Brown, who I think is amazing, never interviewed a single person with the capacity to really experience joy that did not also actively practice gratitude. Gratitude is so foundational in our happiness. Most of the research comes from Seligman, though. So Seligman had lots of interventions that he did in Penn University, huge experiments. He conducted them over the internet. And the single most effective way to turbocharge your joy is to make a gratitude visit, an in-person, holy cow, you've made an impact in my life, mom, dad, brother, sister, aunt, librarian, teacher, mentor, coworker, whoever, somebody at church. It's absolutely remarkable. And so I tried this, and I'm going to be transparent. I tried this. I didn't really feel that much happier. Okay. And so I was like, this didn't work for me. I was writing this gratitude journal, and I was writing down every night what I was grateful for. Well, the more I read and the more I researched, I was doing it wrong. I was doing superficial things. I'm grateful for my coworkers. I'm grateful for my friends. I'm grateful for my kids. And it has to be things that really impact you, things that okay, so perfect example to use is my son. My son is a 22-year-old grown man. He is amazing. I absolutely love him. He saw me going over my slides for this talk, and he came up behind the couch last night, and he just kind of squeezed both of my shoulders, and he was like, "You're going to do great, Mom. You're going to do great." And I wrote that in my journal that night, that I'm so appreciative of him because I felt seen by him. And I felt like he gets me and he knows how good of a job I want to do for you guys to, get this information across for you so it can make an impact in your life. But that's what I'm talking about. When you practice gratitude, it has to be something that's real. It's a legit, it's an experience, that you really, it's a heartfelt thing. And so put that extra effort into it. And, it takes one thing a day, one thing a day. And a book that I love, so Gretchen Rubin wrote this book called The Happiness Project, but she also put out a gratitude journal. And in this gratitude journal, it's about this big, it's pretty small. And there's a line for every day for 5 years. And you just go to that day and you just write down that one thing that you're grateful for. And my ego likes to tell me that my kids are going to fight over this gratitude journal of mine. I have 2 volumes now. When I die, I mean, they're probably going to be like, oh my God, what the heck? My mom is so crazy when they read it. But it is literally every day something that I'm so grateful for. And it's just such a testament. And when I'm having a bad day, it's a wonderful thing to get out and look at and say, okay, I've had better days. This is a good tool to look at. So gratitude, gratitude, gratitude. So we have covered the 4 things that you can do to increase your set point of happiness. Work on nurturing relationships, have new experiences or find your flow, help other people, and be grateful. None of this is new. None of this is something you haven't seen on an Instagram post or haven't seen on a postcard or Hallmark didn't say it. But what you can walk away and know is that over 30 studies showed that these 4 things will increase your set point of happiness according to science. So just know that emotions are absolutely contagious. They're like a virus. They tend to affect people around us, and happy people tend to lift other people up. They lift the mood of other people. I am so grateful for your time tonight, and I hope something I said is something you can start or stop doing. And I believe you may have time for a couple questions if that's all right, but thank you so much. And I'm going to be quiet for a second to see if there's any questions.
Let's see. We don't have a question, but somebody said, I love the quote by President Abraham Lincoln. Most folks are about as happy as they make up their minds to be.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, that it's perfect. It is the perfect quote. Absolutely.
So, if you have questions, go ahead and type them in chat and we'll go through them. I'm going to drop the link to the survey in chat again. So take a moment to fill that out as well. And for those of you who joined us late, we did record this, so once it's up on our YouTube channel, I will send out the link to everybody. I'll also just remind folks that Michelle is going to be back with us next month talking about the science of intermittent fasting, and I have completely forgotten which day now.
I think it's October the 10th, but I could be wrong.
So let me look before I say the wrong date, because I will do that. It is October 26th at 6:30 on Zoom. So you can go to the website and register for it.
Thank you for those comments in the chat. That's great that people said it was a good presentation. So I appreciate that immensely. Thank you. It seems like common sense, but I will tell you, just implementing these simple things rooted in science will make a big impact.
And someone asked if you could repeat the TED Talks that you recommended.
Yeah, absolutely. So the one, let me go back in my slides. I want to tell you the one is about telomeres and aging. You have to just Google that. Let me end my show. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. These are some of my resources. I watch TED Talks constantly. I should probably do something. It didn't lead to my divorce, but it probably did not help. I love TED Talks. They are so great. So one of them is called How Childhood Trauma Affects Health Across a Lifetime. I'll type it in. And it's by Nadine Burke Harris. Another one is the Harvard Longitudinal. You can't spell right on these chats, so just ignore misspelling. Harvard Longitudinal Study of Happiness. And then the last one is the telomeres. Let me find the name of that. I can't find it, but what it is telomeres. Let me see. It's called The Science of Cells That Never Get Old. Thank you, Marilyn. You guys are so kind. Good thing I got a big door on my office to get my head out of here when I leave tonight. That's amazing.
All right. Well, I don't see any other questions, so we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you, Michelle. This was a very interesting program. Not completely new, but always good to hear, and some great new sources to take a look at, some of those TED Talks and some of the other things you referenced. Thank you, everybody, for coming. We hope you'll join us for programs in the future, and have a great evening. Bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you.